It's truly having your own experience, experiencing things in your life from the perspective of I'm the individual creator and I am directly connected to God, source, universe, whatever you like to call it. Hello and welcome. Thank you so much for clicking on this YouTube video. My name is Michelle and welcome to my channel called Michelle the Mystic. In today's video, I wanted to discuss what is New Age spirituality and how is spirituality different from religion. So jumping right into today's topic of what is spirituality and the difference between spirituality and religion, coming from a person who has experienced both sides of it. I grew up Roman Catholic as a Christian my entire life, and throughout my process and my journey and getting older, I've discovered what spirituality means to me. And why I wanted to make this video is because I've had to explain, when I've been trying to explain to people such as my family and friends what I'm really going through, it always comes back to the root of my spiritual journey and what it actually means to be spiritual. And I noticed that a lot of people, especially my family, especially people who are religious, who have been religious their whole lives, who are sort of on the outside of what modern day spirituality is, think that spirituality is actually moving away from God and it's moving away from understanding and universal beliefs and consciousness and higher power and all this kind of stuff, when that's actually the complete opposite. It's I've literally never felt closer in my entire life to understanding the truth, to God, to source, universe, whatever you like to call it. And so throughout my journey, I really had to unpack this within myself, and I realized what actually is the difference between religion and spirituality. And I really wanted to make this video to break down some of those misconceptions for people to understand what exactly spirituality is, coming from a person who has experienced both sides of it. So I'd like to jump right in and start off with this quote by Deepak Chopra, a world-renowned teacher and spiritual activist, that says, "Religion is believing somebody else's experience. Spirituality is having your own experience." And when I read this quote, I was like, wow, that is literally exactly how it feels to me. And so in this video, I want to discuss basically what is religion, what do people think of in terms of New Age spirituality, what does that term mean, and the stigma behind it, and then what actually is spirituality at its true essence, and how all of these are connected and how all of these are related. So firstly, what is religion? So according to the internet, Webster Dictionary and Wikipedia online sources, it says that religion is worshiping, commitment, or devotion to a god or the supernatural. It is designated practices, beliefs, behaviors, values, and worldviews that people adopt. So let's break down that quote that I just shared. Religion is believing someone else's experience. Essentially, at its core, religion is a set of organized beliefs that allow people to go throughout the world, to make sense of their reality, to connect with the divine, with God, to have a greater purpose in their life, to find greater meaning in their life. And that's why a lot of people enjoy religion and like religion, but a lot of other people also don't, because things were originally created to unite people, and in today's society, religion is very, very particular, and it honestly divides a lot of people, and there's a lot of division in our reality today. But essentially, religion is a set of organized beliefs, and in my mind, religion puts people in a box because it tells people how to live based off of certain experiences that happened, and a lot of people take things literally. What is written down, they take it for word, and they try to go about their lives living that way. And I honestly can tell you that I've not met a single person that hasn't struggled with religion and identifying 100% in all of the beliefs for that religion. For myself, I noticed that I grew up Catholic, and for a while I really tried to identify and understand what that meant for me. And as I got older, I sort of realized that I just had to stop and give myself space and allow things to come in and be open to hearing other people's stories and understanding different perspectives, and that eventually I would understand and figure out my own path. And that led me in the direction of my spiritual awakening, of my spiritual journey that I embarked on sort of without choice. But what I wanted to drive home here with this point is that all religions essentially boil down to similar beliefs, and the difference is really in the details. The difference is in the stories that were written from certain people's perspectives. Obviously, different people are going to have different perspectives. Everybody is an individual having their own experience. So for me, the core difference between religion and spirituality is religion is exactly that, adopting someone else's beliefs, while spirituality encourages you to identify and to find your own spiritual beliefs. When I think about religion and spirituality, I think of spirituality as essentially the root. Spirituality is so broad because every individual is obviously an individual, and we can't all adopt specific viewpoints of the world because we all have our own personal experiences, our own perceptions and paradigms in which we live and create the reality in our world today. And so none of those things are going to really align because we are individuals having an individual experience. So spirituality encourages people to have an individual experience to discover the true nature of reality, to have that individual connection to divine source, consciousness, higher power, whatever you call it, God. So that's why it is a little frustrating when people think that because I'm spiritual and not religious, that I'm innately moving away from God, from understanding of divine power, when actually I'm moving directly towards it. It's an individual path for me and me alone. So I can give an analogy of what I mean by spirituality being the root and religion being the rest. Think of a tree. Every single tree has its roots embedded in the ground, and it has a tree trunk. And regardless of what type of tree it is, it has branches and it has leaves of a certain color, of a certain shape. Sometimes they might not even be leaves and they might be like a pine tree or something like that. So in this case, spirituality is the roots and the trunk of every single tree. Every single tree that you will look at always has roots and a trunk. And even if you cut down the top of it, that's always going to be there. That's the center, that's the core of the tree. And religion is the difference in the details. So it's the branches, the way that they look, the color of the leaves, the shape of the leaves, the type of tree it actually is. Even the bark, everything is different. It's individualized for that specific tree to survive. But if you cut down the top of the tree, and you're just left with the tree trunk, you probably wouldn't be able to identify which type of tree it is because it's that tree trunk and it has its roots embedded in the ground. Just like spirituality is that core. It's the trunk of the tree that gives life to the rest of it. And so when you cut out all the rest of it, if you just don't believe in religion and you go to the core and try to find what you believe inside, that's what I value and that's what I think of as spirituality. It's truly having your own experience, experiencing things in your life from the perspective of I'm the individual creator and I am directly connected to God, source, universe, whatever you like to call it. And I want to make a point here that I am not bad-mouthing or saying horrible things about the people who believe in religion or specific types of religion. It's just that in today's society, religion often puts people in a box and makes them feel more isolated than unified. And when religion was originally created, it was to unify people, to have them believe in specific values that would connect them together in their beliefs and also connect them to God and source so that they could start creating and making change in their reality. But even if you look back then, religion was very volatile and people were persecuted for their religious beliefs if they did not conform. And just think about the Christian Crusades and how many people died during that time because people were forcing religions on other people, and that created a divide, but it also created fear, which still exists in a lot of religions today. If you just look at the LGBT plus community, a lot of them are not religious or identify with Catholicism or Christianity because they outcast those people and they say in their beliefs, in their Bible or whatever, that those people are not valued and they look down on them as they're not human or equal or deserve to be loved or worthy, and that's just outright wrong. But at the end of the day, still a lot of people are feeling alienated and isolated from religion when essentially Religion was created to unify people, and it's not doing that today. So now let's move on to what is spirituality and what people think of when they hear the term New Age spirituality. So there's a huge stigma behind the term New Age spirituality that implies New Age, that some people have made up this experience, or that it is tied to occult practices, witchy practices, things that are deemed scary, unworthy, strange, hippy-dippy kind of stuff. And I really, really dislike that, because that's entirely not what it is. The broad definition of what spirituality is essentially believing in something greater than yourself that helps you to find peace and purpose within your life. It gives you a sense of direction, a set of values, of beliefs, behaviors, worldviews very similar to religion, but it encourages the connection and the unity between the mind, body, and spirit, and also recognizes that every single person, we are all innately one. We are tied together as a community, connecting oneness. So that's the difference between spirituality and religion. It's very, very broad because it encompasses every single person, individual experiences that people have. But if you talk to spiritual people, you'll often find that at the end of the day, throughout whatever experience that they had, they essentially also find very similar and specific beliefs even through their individual experiences, because that is essentially what is true for them in their reality, and so it is true for other people too. The amazing thing is that people are going about their lives, having their own experiences, and coming back to the same truths about the nature of reality, about the nature of higher consciousness, of the divine, of source, of what it means to be a human, and of what it means to be a spiritual being, which I find just really, really awesome. But when people hear the word New Age spirituality, people on the outside, or people who are religious, or people who've never experienced or understand what it means to be spiritual in nature, a lot of people think, astrology, tarot cards, meditation, yoga, crystals, numerology, energy stuff, and a lot of these things people don't understand, and these things are tied to occult, ancient practices that people have practiced and don't really understand. A lot of people today, they make fun of things that they don't understand because they just don't value putting in the time and effort to learn about that and understand it. And so I've had plenty of people make fun of me and my crystals, or not, understanding what tarot cards are, or the connection between meditation and yoga and spirituality, all those kinds of things. A lot of people don't understand because they have never had the desire to understand that, or to learn more about it, or to be open about it at all. But what I really want to point out here is that all of these things are not innately spiritual at all. These are all tools that spiritual people use along their journey to identify their reality, to understand and make sense of their reality and their connection to divine source. These things are all tools. They are not innately spiritual. And I'll go into a list of some of these things later and tell you how a lot of them were not originally used for divination or connection to God or source or whatever. And it only became over time that these things were attached to spirituality. And the term New Age spirituality was actually coined in the 1970s when there was this awakening going through, and that was also the hippie era. So a lot of this kind of got mixed in with each other. But none of these tools of divination are actually New Age at all. New Age implies that people sort of made up these experiences, and it implies and sort of makes fun of the idea that people took these bits and pieces and just kind of put them together in a pot, in a melting pot, and called that spirituality, when in fact all of these things are tools that were actually taken from several different religions, occult practices that are ancient, that have been practiced thousands of years ago, and that were still effective and worked then, and people believed in them. The only difference was that there was no stigma. If you look at the ancient Chinese medicines of tea and herbal medicine and and healing and all those kinds of things, those things were practiced and there was no stigma behind those. And they still believe those things today because they were rooted in their practices, in their culture, in their understanding, and those things were deemed acceptable. And what I want to point out with the New Age spirituality is that a lot of people are not deeming that acceptable. Just like we still struggle in today's society with mental illness and deeming that as acceptable and breaking down the stigma behind mental illnesses. Same thing sort of applies. A lot of people get scared of these divination tools, of crystals, of tarot cards, of pendulums, and they don't understand that these things are just tools that we use to understand and get closer to spirit, to get closer to the universe, to divine source creation, and understand and make sense of our reality. That's all that they are. And you can be 100% a spiritual person having a spiritual awakening or spiritual journey and not practice any of these things. All I'm saying is that these things help people in today's society. Like a lot of these things like astronomy and energy healing and natural medicine, these were all pseudosciences to actual sciences that we have today. Astrology was a pseudoscience to astronomy and astrophysics, which essentially means that these things were adapted and started before even modern day astronomy and astrophysics were fully understood. Astrology was actually invented like 3,000 years ago by the Babylonians, and they were one of the first astronomers, and they used the tracking of the constellations and the stars for celestial timing. They invented the seconds and the minutes, how we count the seconds and the minutes based on the constellations, based on celestial timing of the stars. The Babylonians invented astrology because they noticed that there were 12 different constellations, these stars that remained in the night sky throughout the entire year. They were always there. And so they mathematically decided on a 16-degree meridian on the sky in which these 12 signs, these 12 constellations would exist. And they called those the zodiac signs. And they used those to help them understand what season it was and how to harvest and plant and all that kind of stuff. And since then, actually in that 16-degree meridian, a 13th constellation has moved in to that line. So technically nowadays there's 13 zodiac signs, but obviously a lot of people still go by the old zodiac constellations. Tarot cards were actually invented in the 1430s as playing cards for rich aristocrats, and they didn't actually become intertwined with divination until the 16th and 17th century, when they realized that the symbols or the original symbols that were created on these cards were tied to esoteric spiritual beliefs of the ancient Egyptians. And those beliefs were somehow intertwined with the Catholic Church and secrets within the Catholic Church. Similarly, meditation and yoga, these things were taken from ancient practices in China, in India. These things are tied to Buddhism, and if you look at Buddhism and read any actual text about Buddhism, it specifically says that Buddhism is not identifying as a religion. It's a lifestyle. It's a set of beliefs that allow people to connect with their inner being, with soul, with spirit, and connect to divine consciousness. Also, crystals. Crystals, some people really don't understand these things and they just think that they're rocks. But essentially crystals are very high vibrational rocks that were created and formed in specific situations deep within the earth, or however they were formed. And because of that formation, because of those specific conditions, they have such a higher frequency and vibration than most objects. Everything is actually energy. Every single object or thing on this earth vibrates at a specific frequency, at a specific energy that is accepted and understood by science and the scientific community as the quantum realm, the quantum reality. Everything has its own vibrational energy and frequency, and these crystals are just much higher in those vibrations. Everything that you touch has a vibration, but crystals, because of the way that they were formed within the earth, these things have a higher vibration. And you know what, actually, the scientific community realized this, and crystals are actually used to power and be battery sources for modern day technology. So your phone, there are crystals in your phone that help power it. Your laptop, your TV, crystals are in modern day technology because they are such high vibrational rocks, they are such high vibrational things that even the scientific community has used them and understood that and are using them in our technology. And if you don't believe me, go look it up, because that's just the truth of it. And hopefully by now you can understand that a lot of these things, these divination tools, people did not just make up, people did not just adopt. All of these things had ties to spiritual things and ancient occult practices that now we have adopted to help us understand our reality. So essentially, just like religion has mass and religion has fasting or practices or whatever it is. Religion relies on specific things to help people understand their world. So does spirituality. And spirituality is actually the root of all religions, because a lot of religions boil down to very similar things. And spirituality is just creating that experience and identifying that it is your own, and not living through someone else's beliefs, not identifying through someone else's experiences and adopting those into your own life. And so honestly, I think that religious people, they're totally fine. I'm happy that they believe in divine source, consciousness, and God, that they have that connection, but I really don't like the fact that it limits people and doesn't allow them to express themselves in certain ways, and it doesn't allow them to fully understand and connect to the spiritual being that they are. So that's my only problem with religion, and hopefully people in today's society understand that we are more than just our physical beings, because everything in today's society is so materialistic that it's really hard for us to understand things like energy or things like yoga and meditation. It's hard for us to understand things that are connected to the mind, and how the mind and the spirit and the soul are all connected. So I really hope that you enjoyed this video. Thank you again for clicking on it and watching it all the way to the end. If you think that this video would resonate with some other people and would like to share it, please go ahead and do that. Also, please subscribe to my channel, because I am a new YouTuber and would love to grow my community. And if you like this video and any of my other videos, give them a thumbs up. So thanks again for watching, and I hope you guys come back for more.